Tesla car sales in Europe were down 45% in January.
What if we told you that one decision made in Europe could send shockwaves through Wall Street, rattle Elon Musk's empire, and change the entire course of America's electric future? That moment just happened, as the European Union pulls the trigger on a bold move that favors its own EV growth while punishing outsiders. Tesla's dominance is suddenly in freefall, with sales crashing, political backlash mounting, and Chinese rivals ready to pounce. This isn't just a Tesla story. It's a story about the United States losing ground in a global electric war. Buckle up, because things are about to get electrified. Tesla's European empire is crumbling. Tesla was once the crown jewel of the electric vehicle revolution, not just in America, but across Europe. Streets in Germany, France, and the UK were filled with the futuristic hum of Model Ys and Model 3s. Elon Musk's vision seemed unstoppable, until it wasn't. In a stunning twist, Europe has begun turning against the very brand it once embraced. The European Union's latest policy moves may look like standard trade adjustments on the surface, but in reality, they're a loaded gun pointed straight at Tesla's heart. The numbers alone tell a brutal story. Tesla's sales in Europe have plummeted by 45% in January alone, with Germany, once a stronghold, showing a staggering 70% decline. The French market followed closely behind, with a 63% drop. In the UK, sales dipped 12%, a smaller fall, but one that stings nonetheless. For a company that once outpaced legacy brands with sheer innovation, this collapse is more than a rough patch. It's an existential threat. But what's fueling this dramatic shift? Politics, for one. Elon Musk's cozy relationship with Donald Trump has not gone unnoticed in Europe. Musk's vocal support for far-right movements and his alignment with controversial figures has sparked outrage across the continent. Activists have plastered European cities with satirical posters likening Musk to dangerous historical figures, while surveys show that up to 94% of German respondents say they'll never buy a Tesla again. The damage isn't just economic, it's reputational, and Europe's not pulling punches either. The European Union recently enacted policies aimed at shielding its own auto industry from foreign dominance. These measures, in the form of increased tariffs and tighter subsidies for domestic producers, are sending a loud message: support homegrown electric mobility, or pay the price. For Tesla, which still heavily depends on American manufacturing and Chinese battery supply chains, this is a logistical nightmare and a branding disaster rolled into one. It gets worse. The EU's decision isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a broader effort to reclaim control over the electric vehicle supply chain from both China and the United States. European leaders are pouring billions into EV startups and incentivizing consumers to ditch foreign brands in favor of local alternatives, like Volkswagen's ID series or Renault's latest battery offerings. Meanwhile, Tesla's Giga Berlin plant is no longer enough to keep the company competitive in a climate that has rapidly turned hostile. Behind the scenes, Elon Musk is reportedly scrambling. Leaked internal memos hint at emergency strategy meetings and mounting pressure from shareholders. There are even rumors of Tesla lobbying European officials to soften their stance, though these efforts appear to be too little, too late. Musk's hands-off style, once celebrated, now looks like detachment at a time when direct leadership is desperately needed. His recent public silence on the European collapse is deafening. Meanwhile, European consumers are being presented with more options than ever. Chinese EV makers like BYD and NIO are entering the scene with sleek models, longer ranges, and aggressive pricing, making Tesla's offering seem overpriced and out of touch. For the first time in years, Tesla no longer holds the innovation edge, and that's a terrifying reality for a company whose brand is built on disruption. So, what happens when the disruptor gets disrupted? The fall of Tesla's European kingdom might just be the beginning. If Elon Musk doesn't find a way to turn this ship around, the next market to crumble might be closer to home. Could America be next on the EU's hit list? Stay with us. What's coming will shock you even more. Trump's tariff war, the blowback Tesla never saw coming. The unraveling of Tesla's European empire didn't begin with Elon Musk. It began in Washington, with a pen in Donald Trump's hand. In an effort to bring jobs back to America,
We've spent the last 4 years bringing our jobs back to America, securing our borders.
Trump launched a full-scale tariff war during his presidency. It was aimed at foreign nations, especially the European Union, and it was sold as a nationalistic triumph. But now, that very decision is ricocheting back like a political boomerang, slamming into Tesla harder than anyone expected. The irony? Elon Musk, a vocal Trump supporter, is now one of the biggest victims of the fallout. Trump's tariffs weren't subtle. In some cases, they were as high as 25%, targeting everything from European steel to luxury alcohol. It wasn't long before the EU retaliated, slapping massive tariffs on American-made goods, including electric vehicles. Suddenly, Tesla found itself in a chokehold. Cars became dramatically more expensive to sell in Europe, where affordability had once been one of Tesla's key selling points. Musk didn't flinch publicly, but inside Tesla's boardrooms, alarm bells were ringing. While Trump claimed his approach would rebalance trade and punish cheaters, it achieved something very different. It turned allies into adversaries. Europe was no longer just another market, it was now a battlefield. The EU began fast-tracking its own electric vehicle initiatives, pouring money into domestic automakers to ensure they wouldn't be dependent on foreign tech, especially from a company so tightly linked to an unpredictable political figure. Elon Musk might have hoped that Trump's influence would protect Tesla. After all, he was appointed by Trump as Minister of Efficiency in a bizarre symbolic gesture. He had access, praise, and a direct line to the Oval Office. But what Musk failed to anticipate was how closely the rest of the world was watching. In Europe, where political neutrality and corporate responsibility are more deeply intertwined, Musk's alliance with Trump was seen not as a strength, but as a threat. Tesla's woes intensified when the White House, under Trump's leadership, doubled down on its America First rhetoric. Production costs in the US soared due to increased prices on imported materials like cobalt and lithium, crucial elements in electric vehicle batteries. Tesla had no choice but to eat those costs or raise prices. Either way, the European market, already shrinking from consumer backlash, became even less viable. And while Musk quietly pleaded for exemptions and policy changes, the administration stood firm. Behind closed doors, Tesla began to panic. Internal documents revealed urgent cost-cutting measures, staff reductions in European offices, and stalled infrastructure plans across key EU cities. Musk's public image, once futuristic, daring, and untouchable, was now dragging the brand down. Worse, his social media antics only poured fuel on the fire. Tweets mocking European regulations and downplaying climate efforts alienated environmentally conscious buyers, a core demographic for Tesla. All the while, Trump continued to parade Tesla vehicles on the White House lawn, treating them like political trophies. His public endorsement, once a potential asset, had turned into a branding nightmare. Ethics watchdogs raised red flags, and senators from both sides of the aisle questioned whether the administration was too closely tied to one company. What should have been a victory lap turned into a PR disaster. Now Tesla finds itself stuck in no man's land, politically entangled, economically vulnerable, and publicly scrutinized. The once unshakable bond between Musk and Trump may soon face its biggest test yet. Because if the EU keeps pushing back and US tariffs escalate further, will Elon Musk continue to stand by Trump? Or will he be forced to choose between politics and survival? The answer may change everything. Germany turns. It's back. The fall of Tesla in Europe's powerhouse. Tesla's collapse in Germany wasn't just a dip in sales. It was a seismic shift. For years, Germany had been one of Tesla's most important international markets. The country that birthed automotive giants like BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz had surprisingly embraced Elon Musk's electric revolution. But now, the tide has turned sharply. In a nation built on engineering precision and political conservatism, Tesla has gone from admired disruptor to unwelcome outsider almost overnight. The numbers paint a bleak picture. Tesla's sales in Germany plummeted by nearly 70% in the first months of 2025. This wasn't a slow decline, it was a cliff dive. For a company that had recently opened its massive gigafactory outside Berlin with fanfare and national attention, the timing couldn't be worse. German buyers, once captivated by Musk's innovation and sleek design, are now walking away en masse. But why? The answer isn't just economic, it's deeply political. Elon Musk's vocal support for the far-right AfD party.
The tech billionaire Elon Musk has been interviewing the co-leader of Germany's AfD party, Alice Weidel,
during Germany's federal elections shocked many Europeans. While he claimed he admired their strong stance on innovation, critics saw it as an endorsement of xenophobic, ultra-nationalist policies. The backlash was swift. Mainstream German media outlets launched investigations into Musk's political leanings, while grassroots activists plastered posters equating Musk with authoritarianism. The damage was immediate and far-reaching. A staggering 94% of Germans surveyed in a recent poll said they would never consider buying a Tesla again. Think about that. In a country known for its tech-savvy consumers and forward-thinking environmental policies, Tesla has become toxic. It's not just the cars, it's the brand, the name, and the man behind it. This level of rejection is unheard of in modern automotive history, especially for a company once poised to lead Germany's transition to sustainable mobility. What makes the situation even worse is that Tesla has no clear strategy for damage control. Musk, instead of addressing the controversy with humility or nuance, doubled down on his rhetoric. He posted cryptic, defiant messages on his social media platform, mocking his critics and making light of the political accusations. What he may have failed to grasp is that Germany isn't the United States. Public relations missteps there have long-term consequences. In a culture where credibility is currency, Musk's antics cost him dearly. Meanwhile, German automakers seized the opportunity. Companies like Volkswagen and BMW have ramped up their electric offerings, flooding the market with affordable, high-quality EVs. The local loyalty factor played a significant role too. Why buy from a foreign brand mired in political scandal when German manufacturers are finally catching up with compelling electric alternatives? For many buyers, the decision was easy, and Tesla paid the price. Adding insult to injury, the German government began reviewing Tesla's environmental permits and subsidies. What was once fast-tracked for approval in Berlin is now being scrutinized line by line. Rumors swirl that Tesla's local operations may face regulatory slowdowns or even fines. Even if the company recovers its reputation in the long run, these bureaucratic headwinds could slow production, drain resources, and compound the damage. So what does this mean for Tesla globally? If Germany, Europe's largest economy and automotive heart, has turned cold, other countries may soon follow. Is this just the beginning of a broader European rejection of Tesla, or can the company rebuild its standing before it's too late? The answer may determine whether Tesla survives the next phase of the global EV war. France, the UK, and the domino effect. As Germany recoiled from Tesla, other European countries quickly followed suit, like falling dominoes. France, a key player in the EU and an early adopter of electric vehicles, had once been a promising market for Elon Musk's vision. But now Tesla's foothold there is slipping fast. In January alone, Tesla's sales in France plunged by an alarming 63%. For a company built on momentum, this was a dramatic stall. And worse, it wasn't isolated. French consumers, known for their sensitivity to political and cultural signals, didn't take kindly to Musk's growing support of far-right ideologies. His vocal attacks on left-leaning figures in France, paired with perceived political meddling, ignited a storm of backlash. Social media in the country lit up with calls for boycotts. Activist groups labeled Tesla the face of American extremism. The blow to Tesla's reputation didn't just come from political circles, it came from the public, and it was loud. The UK wasn't spared from the fallout either. Traditionally more economically aligned with the US, Britain had been one of Tesla's strongest supporters in Europe, but even there, sales dropped by 12% year over year. It wasn't just the politics, though Musk's criticism of British leadership and controversial social media posts certainly didn't help. What really stung were the viral images plastered across London. Musk depicted in controversial gestures with slogans like "From Silicon Valley to 1939." The message was brutal, and it stuck. The damage wasn't limited to memes and protests. British celebrities and influencers, once proud Tesla drivers, began publicly distancing themselves from the brand. One high-profile TV presenter auctioned off her Tesla Model S and donated the proceeds to anti-hate charities, drawing massive media attention. Suddenly, owning a Tesla wasn't a status symbol in Europe, it was a statement. And increasingly, it wasn't a statement many wanted to make. The PR damage was compounded by a perfect storm of competition. Brands like Peugeot, Renault, and MG, backed by Chinese tech and European subsidies, launched aggressive EV models at lower price points. These cars weren't just cheaper, they were more in tune with European aesthetics and driving culture. Tesla, which had once outpaced everyone, suddenly looked out of place. Too American, too brash, too political. And in Europe, where brand trust matters as much as product performance, that shift was fatal. Musk's miscalculations had created an identity crisis. Tesla had once been synonymous with clean tech, innovation, and modern luxury. Now, in much of Europe, it was seen as a vehicle for controversy, aligned with populist politics and erratic leadership. Analysts began wondering if Tesla had any real cultural insight into the markets it served. Could a brand so firmly tied to one man, one increasingly polarizing figure, survive abroad? In boardrooms across Europe, this chaos created opportunity. EU regulators began discussing more aggressive support for domestic EV producers. Funding was rerouted. New emissions regulations seemed tailor-made to challenge Tesla's supply chain. Even subsidies that once benefited Tesla were quietly revised or pulled. One EU trade official was quoted anonymously saying, "If Musk wants to be a political actor, he should expect political consequences." The gloves were off. With Germany, France, and the UK turning cold, one thing became clear. Tesla's European retreat wasn't an isolated event. It was a full-blown collapse in confidence. But with China rising in the background and trade tensions tightening their grip, the real question loomed large. If Europe is turning its back on Tesla, who's waiting in the wings to take its place? The rise of China, a new global EV king? As Tesla stumbled across Europe, the Chinese electric vehicle industry seized the moment with silent precision and staggering force. While headlines in the West centered on Elon Musk's missteps, Chinese automakers like BYD, NIO, and XPeng were quietly flooding global markets with high-tech, affordable EVs that turned heads and converted skeptics. Nowhere was this more evident than in China itself, where EV sales skyrocketed to record levels by the end of 2024. August 2024 marked a historic milestone. China became the first country ever to sell over 1 million electric vehicles in a single month. This wasn't just an achievement, it was a warning shot. As the European market shrank by 3%, China's EV market ballooned by 40% year over year. These numbers weren't driven by gimmicks. They reflected deep, deliberate investments in manufacturing, battery technology, and domestic incentives that made EVs the norm, not the novelty. Chinese government policies played a pivotal role. Massive trade-in programs, range-extending hybrid vehicle subsidies, and relentless urban electrification campaigns shifted the market overnight. By 2025, more than one-third of all EVs sold globally carried a Chinese badge. BYD alone offered over 40 distinct EV models across 4 different brands, catering to every niche, from budget-conscious commuters to luxury-minded executives. In contrast, Tesla's limited lineup began to look outdated and overpriced. The growth wasn't confined to China's borders. Chinese EV manufacturers had already laid the groundwork for expansion into Europe. BYD's upcoming manufacturing facility in Hungary is set to begin production in 2025, a strategic move to sidestep EU tariffs while delivering Chinese-made vehicles directly into the heart of Europe. This decision came at a critical time, just as European governments began erecting trade barriers against American imports. China was planting its flag inside the EU's own territory. The implications for Tesla are severe. As European consumers turn away from Musk, they're not abandoning EVs altogether. They're just switching brands. And increasingly, they're choosing Chinese options. Once wary of Chinese craftsmanship, European drivers now praise the value, build quality, and cutting-edge technology found in models like the BYD Seal, the Neo ET7, and the Zeekr 001. These cars weren't just filling a gap left by Tesla, they were raising the bar. Meanwhile, back in the United States, policymakers are beginning to see the writing on the wall. China's meteoric rise in the EV space doesn't just threaten one brand, it threatens the entire American auto industry's future. If Tesla can't compete abroad, and legacy automakers continue to lag behind in EV innovation, China could dominate a sector once proudly pioneered in Silicon Valley. The economic and geopolitical consequences would be enormous. Yet, American responses have been shattered. Trump's tariffs, intended to protect US interests, may have inadvertently strengthened China's hand. By souring relationships with Europe and provoking retaliatory policies, the US weakened its own EV flagship, Tesla, while allowing Chinese competitors to maneuver freely. It was an ironic twist. In trying to protect American industry, the administration may have gifted dominance to a foreign rival. With China's EV empire growing and Tesla's crown slipping, a chilling question arises. Has the US already lost the electric vehicle race without even realizing it? And if so, what can it do now to stop China from taking it all? Trump versus Tesla. The relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk has always been complicated, part admiration, part manipulation. On one hand, Musk was hailed by Trump as a symbol of American innovation. On the other, Trump's protectionist policies may have dealt Tesla its most damaging blow. As the electric vehicle war intensifies, it's becoming clear that Trump's tariffs, intended to safeguard American jobs, are crushing the very company he once championed. When Trump initiated aggressive tariffs against the European Union, he saw it as a power move to renegotiate America's role in global trade. What he didn't anticipate was the collateral damage. Europe retaliated swiftly, targeting US automakers, including Tesla. As Musk watched his European sales nosedive, he found himself in an uncomfortable position, aligned politically with a president whose economic moves were bleeding his business dry. The numbers paint a dire picture. Tesla's sales in Europe plummeted by 45% in early 2025, with Germany, once a promising market,
in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market
reporting a near 60% collapse. France and the United Kingdom followed with equally grim figures. Suddenly, Musk's brand was no longer just an EV leader. It was a political lightning rod, entangled in the web of Trump's increasingly combative foreign policy. And yet, in the face of this implosion, Trump doubled down on his support. He showcased Tesla vehicles on the White House lawn, praised the Cybertruck's design, and even declared he would personally purchase a Tesla to show support. For Musk, this endorsement came with a steep price. Rather than softening international tensions, it only deepened the divide. European consumers, already wary of Musk's political alliances, began to boycott the brand altogether. Behind closed doors, tension brewed. Tesla sent an unsigned letter to the US trade representative warning of disproportionate and negative impacts from Trump's tariffs. The fact that no one at Tesla dared to sign the letter reveals how toxic the environment had become. Employees feared backlash, not just from foreign markets, but from the very administration they were trying to warn. Musk, once seen as a brilliant disruptor, now found himself painted as a political operative. His support for far-right parties in Germany and France added fuel to the fire, alienating vast swaths of Tesla's global customer base. Protests erupted outside Tesla dealerships. "Everybody hates Elon" posters went viral. Musk's personal politics were no longer just a side story, they were the brand. Meanwhile, Wall Street began to take notice. Tesla's stock, which had flirted with the trillion-dollar mark, crumbled under the weight of political turmoil and plummeting sales. Investors grew jittery. Longtime supporters began asking the question no one dared speak aloud. Is Elon Musk's political baggage now a liability too big for Tesla to carry? If Trump continues to drive his tariff war forward and Musk clings to the chaos, is Tesla headed for a full-blown identity crisis, one where politics finally overtakes performance? Rivals on the rise. As Tesla's dominance falters in Europe, the electric vehicle battlefield is rapidly shifting. Where once Elon Musk stood nearly uncontested, a wave of hungry competitors is charging forward, ready to fill the vacuum left behind. Chinese and European automakers, long considered second-tier players in the EV arms race, now see Tesla's decline as their greatest opportunity to leapfrog ahead.
We do have significant volume on Tesla this morning as well, so this has a little bit of conviction behind it when you see this move.
For them, the timing couldn't be better. For Tesla, it couldn't be worse. Among these rising contenders, Chinese powerhouse BYD is leading the charge. Already outselling Tesla in China, BYD has been methodically expanding into Europe, quietly undercutting Tesla on price, while delivering comparable, if not superior, technology. BYD's lithium iron phosphate battery offers a safer and more cost-effective alternative, and with fewer political strings attached. European customers who once saw Tesla as the pinnacle of EV innovation are now giving BYD a second look, and they're liking what they see. But it's not just China making waves. Germany's own Volkswagen Group has doubled down on its electrification strategy, launching a fresh fleet of EVs under its Audi and ID sub-brands. With deep roots in European manufacturing and a more neutral political footprint, VW is reclaiming home turf. Their vehicles may not have the Cybertruck's flair, but they offer something Musk is rapidly losing: trust and stability. Even legacy players like BMW and Mercedes-Benz are gaining ground. While they were initially slow to adapt to the EV revolution, they've now combined decades of automotive craftsmanship with cutting-edge battery technology. What they lack in Silicon Valley buzz, they make up for in dependability and luxurious refinement. European buyers, stung by Musk's brash behavior, are increasingly choosing familiarity over flash. The real disruptor, however, may be the convergence of software and hardware. Companies like NIO and XPeng are pushing the limits of autonomous driving, in-car AI, and user experience, areas where Tesla once reigned supreme. These new rivals are not only innovating, but also avoiding the pitfalls Musk has stepped into. They aren't caught in international political battles. They aren't under media fire for erratic behavior. And they certainly aren't losing half their customer base in the world's most lucrative EV markets. Compounding Tesla's woes is the speed at which these competitors are scaling. As European factories ramp up, local governments are offering subsidies to homegrown manufacturers while distancing themselves from Tesla. These incentives, once used to lure Musk into building Giga Berlin, are now being redirected to brands less politically radioactive. The shift is subtle but strategic. Tesla is being pushed out, not by direct rejection, but by quiet substitution. And let's not forget about Apple. Whispers of the long-rumored Apple car are growing louder, and if it becomes a reality, Tesla could face its most devastating competition yet. Apple knows hardware, it knows software, and, most importantly, it knows how to avoid controversy. If Apple enters the EV space with the same polished precision that it brought to the iPhone, Tesla might be reduced to just another early innovator who lost control of the narrative. The question now isn't whether Tesla will bounce back, it's whether the rivals currently surging ahead will let it. Has Elon Musk opened the door too wide for them to close again? Is this the end of Tesla's reign? Behind closed doors, whispers of desperation are echoing through Tesla's global offices. For a company that once set the benchmark for the electric revolution, the tone has changed from bold innovation to damage control. Elon Musk, once hailed as a visionary, is now navigating a storm of geopolitical backlash, consumer doubt, and collapsing investor confidence. Insiders say the mood is tense. Meetings have shifted from ambitious expansion to salvaging what can still be saved. Musk's public defiance masks the growing anxiety within the company, while he projects confidence on social media, calling critics boring and brushing off controversies. Tesla's internal memos reportedly paint a much grimmer picture. Analysts are slashing forecasts, dealers are reporting unsold inventory piling up, and investor calls have turned from futuristic roadmaps to uncomfortable financial justifications. For the first time in years, Tesla feels vulnerable. The ripple effect is now global. American consumers are becoming wary of associating with a brand mired in political drama. In Europe, the fall from grace has been swift and severe. And in China, where competition is at an all-time high, Tesla is no longer the status symbol it once was. In fact, with BYD and other Chinese giants expanding aggressively, Tesla's entire international business model is being outpaced on price, technology, and customer trust. Musk's close relationship with Donald Trump, once a controversial asset, is rapidly becoming a liability. Political favoritism is alienating more moderate consumers and intensifying scrutiny. Tesla has always relied on being the outlier, the rebellious innovator, but now that same identity is isolating it in a global market that is choosing consistency and diplomacy over erratic disruption. But this isn't just about one company. Tesla's fall has broader implications for America's technological supremacy. As Tesla slips, so too does the US foothold in the global EV race. With China's government-backed push and Europe's recalibration toward homegrown solutions, Tesla's fading dominance could signal a turning point in the global power structure of clean technology. The final question looming large: can Musk reinvent himself and Tesla once more? He's done it before, pulling the company from the brink in its early years. But now, the battlefield is different. The stakes are higher, the enemies are stronger, and the world is less forgiving. This time, he's not just fighting for market share, he's fighting for Tesla's legacy. Because if this downward spiral continues, Tesla might become the cautionary tale of the century, a company that led the world into the EV future, only to be outpaced by the very revolution it started. And if Tesla can fall this far, who's really safe in the world of innovation anymore? As Tesla grapples with plummeting sales, trade wars, and political controversy, a new global power is rising, and the consequences could be devastating for the US auto industry. With China gaining ground and the EU tightening its grip, the electric vehicle race is no longer just about innovation, it's about survival. If you thought this was the end of the story, think again. Hit that like button, subscribe to stay ahead of the curve, and check out our other videos for more shocking developments in the world of EVs, tech, and global power struggles. You won't want to miss what happens next.